beginning, there was one source of light. It would die and come back every night. As a woman showing off her thighs, just a little bit at a time. In the beginning, everyone bowed their heads toward the light. They would dance and eat their friends alive. We were not happy then, these were simpler times. Now we all play, we're the moth, we're the flame. We were aware of the danger, but we could not keep away. My eyes are open. In the beginning, I was standing out in the yard with my father pointing up at the stars. I asked, do you think there is life on Mars? Is there life like ours?
We hit our marks and we stay healthy and we don't get off course. I think it's the potential of doing this course in 3 days or less. Set your sights, shoot high.
I've never done anything quite this long, so I think that'll be the interesting part, is just being on your feet for 3 days moving. Hal and I are both expecting fathers. I don't think that necessarily changes our approach to the trip, but it's a huge thing to have in the back of your head.
It's an unending trail, and you're messed up mentally and emotionally and physically for weeks after, every year. At least I am. I think when you're an ultra runner, you're kind of labeled as a freak. People can't wrap their minds around it. Like, they're like, I don't even like to drive that far, you know? Like, but they get the John Muir Trail. You say you walk for 2.5 miles an hour, and they think, I can do that, you know? It's kind of this kind of like equalizer of pace. It just seems so doable, and then you try to do it, and then it seems so impossible.
My name's Mike Wolfe. I live in Missoula, Montana.
My name's Mike Wolfe. I'm from Missoula, Montana. I'm Hal Koerner. I'm from Ashland, Oregon.
For me, there's this deep draw. Try to achieve something that you don't know whether you can do or not.
I've looked forward to being on this trail for probably 15 years, and not necessarily the most runnable terrain.
We had originally planned a camping trip with my daughter Eva, who's 2, when we got a call from Hal less than a week before, asking if we could help him on the John Muir Trail. So we changed our plans and decided to go support Hal and Mike as their main crew.
And knowing Hal, who will show up to a 100-miler the day before and will say, oh, if you're out there, I'll just take a water bottle, or, you know, whatever you have. It was totally his style.
Yeah.
Guys run 13, 14-hour 100-milers, but on the John Muir Trail, we knew they'd be out there for days.
And they had given us a plan of probably trying to run 80, 90 miles a day on the John Muir Trail, and we felt like that was a little aggressive, so we gave them some advice, and we kind of reworked their plan a little bit.
Trying to have a little bit more patience. For me, maybe it's almost like having a lobotomy. You know, I don't know how well I'll deal with that.
The John Muir Trail obviously has become known as a test piece for ultra runners and multi-day runners, but really how I see it is that it's the best long trail probably in the world. And it goes continuously for 223 miles.
From Mount Whitney to Yosemite Valley. It's just a fantastic route and total classic.
The thing that blows my mind about the JMT is you're in California, you know, the land of freeways and, you know, millions of people, and you're on this trail that doesn't cross a road for 200 miles.
I don't know where else on the planet you can find something like that.
And it's high. It's like the hard rock course in the first half. Whitney, right off the bat, is 14, and then you hit a 13,000-foot pass, and then the passes all after Forester. You've got Glen, Pinchot, Mather, Muir. They're all like right around 12, just below or just above 12, and it takes its toll.
It's dry, it's dusty, very often forest fires, relentlessly rocky, crummy footing for running. It's hot.
The scenery is second to none. It's just continuous wilderness the entire way, and it's just one spectacular view after another. Yeah, it's beyond words.
Hal and I, we want to do it together because I think our styles match up really well. We've never done anything like this together before.
Mike Wolfe has been running ultras and setting standards in the racing world for a long time. He has a number of victories and course records that I definitely look up to, from his White River championships to super fast times at Western States, you know, faster than I'd ever run there. Championship at the North Face Endurance Challenge, which was a highly contested event. I think he has a lot of grit and a lot of mettle.
I think we'll have fun out there together, but he might be getting sick of me by a couple days into this thing. We'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
That, or JB, if you just want to throw the rest of the list for JB, I'm totally okay with that too. Does that work, you think?
Yeah, that's fine.
This thing, I had no idea this is so monstrous. Nice, that's better.
I mean, we had a lot of adrenaline, we had a lot of anticipation, a lot of excitement.
We began our hike up Mount Whitney, and Hal and I were both just really excited to get going.
The sun was already up pretty good. You're pretty exposed from the get-go. The moment took over a little bit for us.
Hal and I were probably going a little bit too fast just because we were so excited. We got to the summit in 3 hours and 22 minutes, which was plenty fast. Amazing views from the summit of Mount Whitney. I was in the present and just really excited about the journey we were about to partake on.
Personally, getting up Mount Whitney has been just something I've always wanted to do.
Hung out up there for about 15 minutes.
You get up to the top, we got a job to do, we need to be moving on, but at the same time, we want to kind of soak in the moment.
The past 4 years of my life, I've been consumed with the John Muir Trail. I wanted 4 years ago on my first try to beat the men's record, and this past year on my 4th consecutive try, I didn't get the men's record, I didn't come close to the women's record, but I did finish in 4.5 days, which was the first time I finished.
One of the high points of the first day was going over Forester Pass, just over 13,000 feet. Just this rocky, nasty gun sight notch of a little pass through the mountains.
It was glorious, you know, for somebody who lives in Oregon where, you know, you don't get to see too many views unless you're in the clear cut. Getting up and over Forester was really the motivation. You know, those were the high points for me, regardless of my stomach feeling like it was going, regardless of the heat exposure and feeling like we were already getting fried, and the dehydration that went along with that. I was just really motivated by where we were.
Then we had a lot of runnable terrain down through a valley.
You know, we had an additional pass before we got to Kearsarge, and then that's where we were going to see our first crew point.
And we showed up there about 7 in the evening, which was more or less right on schedule. Jeff Kozak was there. He was awesome. He had sliders for Hal and chocolate milk,
donuts,
a full-on spread, so much food that we couldn't even eat it all.
I think that really helped us out.
I remember Hal making some comment that the trail wasn't as runnable as he thought it would be, because he cracked some joke about, oh wow, we were able to pull off a 10-minute mile here, you know. It just seems like the whole trail FKT phenomenon is becoming more and more popular. In the middle of summer now, it seems like every time you turn around, there's someone else out on the JMT, you know, going after the FKT.
There is a fairly established history to folks attempting fastest known times on the John Muir Trail.
Blake Wood had written a very detailed account of his speed trip on the John Muir Trail, which had happened in the late 90s.
But Peter Backwood and I thought we could do it in a different style. We could literally run it. We could turn this into a run. I think the JMT 4-day mark is like the 4-minute mile. It's this epic number, and the only way to really do a good job on it is to understand the mountains very, very well. You can't just be a good runner.
So I was still a little annoyed by the 4-day thing, or I wanted to see if it could be done. I was sort of psyched on it, so I went and did a supported thing on my own and managed to get under the 4 days, which was the goal.
My goal was to try to break or set the women's fastest time. I set off from Whitney Portal with my tiny little 4-pound Nathan pack. And for the whole thing, I probably only ran a third of it. I mean, I didn't do that much running. It was mostly fast walking. I am really horrible with multitasking, but I can focus in on one thing. I was there mentally. I was so into what I was doing.
The people who do really well on something like the JMT are people who are just incredibly tough, self-reliant people like Sue Johnston and Brett Monet.
When I crunched the numbers, I realized the record pace was less than 3 miles an hour. And at the time, I figured, well, I mean, I can hike 3 miles an hour, indefinitely. And so I decided to give it a shot. I made it to the Woods Creek Bridge at 5:07. I guess 2 minutes ahead of my projection. In general, I'm feeling fairly good. My feet are hurting more and more. And it's roughly halfway, so I'm going at just over 3.5 day pace. I know I have the record. I just need to keep walking. But I don't know if I can. I'm hallucinating all over the place. I'm metabolating my muscle. I don't know if I can keep it up for another 14 miles. Yeah, it's not about the time. It's not about the time at all. You get beaten up from it, so it's a real risk to do this sort of thing. It's a lot to ask. Well, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I had no idea.
And so we started out of there, and I could already tell our pace had slowed substantially and our spirits were down a little bit. We were gonna have to hit a couple more passes before we'd been actually rest and try to get some sleep. You know, the sun was starting to set, and we'd been on our feet for almost 12 hours, and here we'd gone 40, 50 miles.
Then we got into our first night section.
We still had a long way to go. We still had to get over Pincho Pass, and that was pretty grueling, and it was really cold up at the top, and I was ready to sleep at the top. We were still like, well, it's only 4 miles down to, our next crew spot. I still kept thinking like 3 or 4 miles, the pace we're going, that's an hour, in the dark. I think that's when it started to really set in how fast we could really go on this trail, and it wasn't that fast.
I was only a child, and I was better with the notion.
This thing's pretty heavy.
Someday I would make my way to the men who think they're chosen. Sometimes I see her in your eyes, and the suspicious looks of others.
Woohoo! We made it, Eva, 9 miles, 7,000 feet of climbing.
And if I could paint a picture to show you how it feels beyond a blank canvas between the factories and the field.
How'd that, Eva? Long day, huh? Whew. Stretch, stretch. Yeah, I'm pretty worked. Oh.
Where the angels dance on the head of a pin, I'll be at the door to welcome them in.
We arrived with JB, Benna, and Jen and Eva, his wife and daughter. JB was sleeping on the side of the trail to make sure we wouldn't miss him. And we got there, and that's where we slept for a couple hours.
That's gonna take a minute. It might have stopped at 7. No, 1925 from the summit. Oh, from the summit, yeah.
You guys, are you splitting this?
2 hours. Yeah, 5 minutes. Okay. All right.
That's rough. Once you get going, it's rough. Mile, give it a mile.
You guys look like 2 climbers on a portaledge.
I know they do.
I wish I was on a portaledge and it was Hal's lead. Just lay in the sun for a couple more hours. Take your time up there, Hal. I'm gonna make another cup of coffee down here.
We'll see you guys tomorrow. I'll run down. Be careful.
Okay. Thanks for
The first day there was so much excitement. We were feeling good, talking a lot. The second day started to take more of a toll.
We headed out of there still super exposed. It was shivering in the morning.
Are you Frankenstein?
Dude.
Whoa.
Nothing. Oh God. Uh-oh. Into the horse manure. Oh.
And then the sun would come out, and the moment the sun was hitting you, you were shedding layer. So it was like this, it was one polar extreme to the other, and that was kind of hard to deal with.
Thanks again.
Yeah, all right, man.
Take care.
Hang in there.
Yep. Did you want to stay on the John Muir Trail? Oh, okay. I guess. You're at or above 10,000 feet for pretty much this entire trail. By 9 or 10 in the morning, the intensity of the sunlight in late July just really starts to wear on you. The backs of our legs were just completely sunburnt, our necks and arms. We were trying to stay covered up.
Over Mather Pass, we dropped into LeConte Canyon, and it was like the hottest part of the day. It literally took 4 hours plus to go 13 miles.
By the time we got to our next crew point with Tom at mile about 83, we were both pretty depleted, I think really dehydrated.
I was laying in the stream for 20, 30 minutes, and that was like something I rarely do, but it was refreshing, and I felt like maybe this will liven up the legs a little bit.
We didn't sleep there. We tried to make that stop pretty quick, keep it to an hour.
Mike seemed a little bit anxious about the time and how long things were taking, I could tell.
Got going again in the midday heat, up and over a 12,000 foot long pass. This is the section where we're going 50 miles without crew. going up and over that pass, we both were just kind of getting the stumbles and having a real hard time, and I think we both were just really tired at that point. We started to get into all these fire zones where all these forest fires were burning, so it started to get really smoky.
The sun went down, we got out of the intense heat. We definitely got into the heart of like the smoke.
It was kind of this ominous sense of Armageddon where it was just raining ash. It looks, you know, in your headlamp glow, it looks like it's snowing, but it's just ash coming down. But we were lucky that we did have this section of runnable trail. Both of us started to hit a real low point. We had hoped to make it all the way through the night to our next crew spot at mile 130.
Mike got into a place where he was like, I need to rest. He's like, we're not moving well. And he's like, I think if I take an hour nap, I'll be able to get going again. I was like, I don't think this is a good idea. So we both kept trudging on. And then it was, you know, I thought it was one of those things where I had to listen to my partner a little bit more.
So we decided to stop and rest. And we just pulled out our emergency bivvies right there in the trail.
Laid down and tried to close our eyes. The things you don't worry about when you're on the move, you know, all of a sudden I was thinking about all this rush of feelings started happening, and I started to get a little bit anxious and started to get, you know, even a little bit nervous about how I was going to make it through this thing.
Cold. They kept us warm for a little while, but not warm enough to really sleep that well. It was one of those bivvies where you probably doze off a little, but not much. I think we were both so cold by 3 a.m. and hadn't really slept that we just got up and kept moving. Got up over the pass and then had to stop again. Hal started to get some really bad blisters under the calluses of his right foot.
It was just another thing, but it was like, okay, let's stop, get this taken care of and get on. And ultimately we were trying to get to our next crew checkpoint, which was probably the most volatile of all our crew checkpoints because we had never met the guy that was coming up to Vermilion Ranch and coming across the lake to come meet us.
There's only about 5 spots where you can drop, and only 2 of them are really feasible. The other 3 are just an epic to drop, so you might as well go on. It's like it's supported, but you can't bank on your support because it's too few and far between.
For some reason, I think there was this lingering question in the back of both of our minds going into that spot.
Because we're already a little bit behind schedule, we're depleted, we don't have any resources, we're super tired, and we need this.
Coming down the final descent to where we were supposed to meet our crew person, a woman was hiking up the trail. It was about 8:30 in the morning, asked us if we were looking for Nathaniel, and we said yes. And she said, oh, he just left. And that sense of heaviness of that moment was definitely palatable.
Everything we thought might happen just happened.
That was a really trying moment for us, and we had to figure out what we were going to do. It was only a mile from Lake Edison, and on the other side of Lake Edison there was a resort where there's a trailhead, and at the resort they had food and a store.
We got down to the boat crossing where we were supposed to go.
The boat only ran from 8 to 10 in the morning and 3 to 5 in the afternoon, and it was like 10 after 10, so we had literally just missed the boat. We got all our food that we had left out of our packs, which consisted of half a bag of jerky, and that's what was gonna last us the next 30 miles.
And luckily I was able to text JB in our next crew spot, and I was like, we're out of luck.
Running in to get supplies to Hal and Mike. They ran out of food about 10, 15 miles ago. I'm gonna try to meet them as soon as I can. I'm going over Duck Pass, trying to get on the John Muir Trail.
Incredibly, really, JB came running down the trail and had made it further than we had thought he would or hoped he would.
Dude, you alive? So good to see you. We're like barely hanging on right now. We haven't eaten in like eons, dude.
Yeah. Well, I got some sandwiches, some Coke.
Sweet.
Odwalla.
Oh, dude, you're a godsend.
Yeah.
I can't believe we got. Oh my gosh. Ow! Thanks so much for coming in, man. Holy cow.
Of course. What? Yeah? You guys hungry?
Yeah. Starving.
We had this cornucopia of fueling and supplies.
A couple ham and cheese sandwiches, Coca-Colas, some juice, Snickers bars, and a bunch of gels. And Hal and I knew at that point that we would be able to make it.
And definitely made us feel like we could power on to Red's Meadow, where we knew we had another checkpoint. We found our legs again. We found the ability to be able to run. The sun had, got off our back. Temps had dropped a little bit. We had fuel. We were a little bit delirious, but we were still able to push. I think getting to Red's was really the big thing for that too.
We made it all the way to Red Meadows, I think about 9:30, 10.
Hey man, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Come around here, you guys.
It's something
Come
else.
sit, let's get some.
I'm just like, what's crazy is that you're just like, we only have 2 hours to sleep.
I know.
Right. Go get this
Guys
going,
are
right?
still
Yeah, let's do this.
rolling though.
Yeah.
Thanks, JB.
Yeah.
Dude, how fuck's out here? Dude, the guy just posted he left an hour before you guys.
Don't shine nice, please.
It gets worse before it gets better.
Well, it gets worse, but then
But we expect that.
yeah, it's nothing.
Gotta climb the heck
It's
out
no
of this
give me.
She's my assistant. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Well, you guys are going to both have little crew members by the end of the year. So you said 11:45 or 11:30?
Is that all right, Hal? Either way. You want to do full 2 hours?
Yeah, let's do full 2 hours.
Okay.
The one night where I laid down and I looked up at the stars, you could see all the galaxies, and it was the enormity of where you were, and everything paled in comparison to what you were trying to do, and even who we are. I thought those things kind of transcended why we were out there.
You're gonna wear this right now. You want a cup of Coke after that? We'll just go up there too. One of these guys.
Okay, you guys got 5 minutes. Here. Actually, it's 10 minutes. So if you leave 5 minutes, you'll be ahead of him.
All right, Michael, you ready? Oh.
You go,
Thanks, brother. Okay.
A little bit.
Okay. Knock it out. Yeah.
It wasn't until, you started down the trail and trying to let everything warm up, it kind of dawned on me that Mike wasn't moving so well anymore.
It's a huge climb, long climb, 21 miles up and over Donahoe Pass. I think we were not anticipating how long that climb would be.
I think things were getting a little testy. Inside, both of us were just cursing the trail and where we were at.
Once we got over the top, we were dropping down into Tuolumne Meadows, and that's where you can finally feel like you're getting into Yosemite Park, you're getting closer to the finish.
And then thinking, do we have enough time? That we are cutting it close now.
We were borderline with where we were going to be on the record. We knew we couldn't slack off. We had to be pushing. Going into it, we thought we'd be well ahead of his record at that point, which didn't turn out to be the case. We knew it was going to be a push to the end.
I'd had a bloody nose for about 6 hours straight.
Are you on Coke? Are you drinking?
It's actually, it's just like you can't be, I'm like running nonstop trying to get to, at 11,000 feet trying to get to this top. It didn't work.
No, it doesn't work because you're not stopping.
Yeah.
You probably have your blood vessels probably just totally exposed.
It is what it is, but it was like so frustrating.
There's soup I can hand you, Mike, if that's sounding good. If not, just keep your burrito rolling. Yep, you
Well, don't put any sense.
Say hi, Hal.
Here, Hal, let me get a close
It's time for a nap for this one.
Yeah, we'll take a nap.
Right there, sit right there. Perfect.
So the final section was about 25 miles.
You climb out of Tuolumne and it's about a 1,000-foot climb. There was a ton of dust and it was the middle of the day and it was hot.
Hal took the lead. He was feeling better than I was. I was really struggling to keep moving with my shin and just hobbling along.
What I felt like for the next 5 hours was just constantly watching the clock, watching our pace, watching our clock, watching our pace, and then also wondering exactly what is the mileage? How much further do we have? There came a point where the mileage and the times and everything didn't really link up for us as far as breaking the record. We had a revelation that, hey, this might not happen unless we really go for it.
I had to focus on staying upright. I felt like I was gonna fall right on my face in the dirt. I was so exhausted and broken. I was emotionally shot.
Mike and I were looking at ourselves like we are actually falling apart. Not just mentally, which I thought would happen way before, but even physically, we are just falling apart in every way.
Just the lowest of lows. Like it was a low that I never even comprehended that I could go that low. I had this moment of clarity where I just made this decision in my mind that I couldn't let Hal down and that we were so close to the record.
And Mike looked at me and he said, I'm not gonna let you down. And you know, he took off down that trail, and as I would expect him to do in most trail races that I've been with him and not be able to stay up with him, you know, we were cranking and it became really fun. It became almost, we were motivated. It actually felt like I was running again. I mean, we were passing day hikers and we had kids who were out on day hikes start running with us. We're getting there, we're getting there.
And once we got down within a few miles of the finish, and I think it finally set in that we were gonna make it and pull it off, our bodies just kind of shut down at that point and we just cobbled to the finish.
I almost crumbled right there. Level became uphill almost.
It was this steep, paved, switchback downhill, and neither of us had it in us to run anymore.
Both of us are now on a paved road, completely destroyed, you know, barely walking downhill. This is where this thing has left us. And this was the end of the John Muir Trail.
Being out there for over 3 days with another person and relying on that person is a big deal, and I think that's what made this trip for us so special, is that partnership and doing it with someone else. That was probably the highest point for me, was right before the finish line, being right there, stumbling down the trail with Hal and realizing that we had pulled this thing off and we had done it together the entire time.
That was a huge elation and a huge accomplishment. Just that moment brought everything together. It was pretty sweet.
Proud of you, good job.
Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Yeah. It's the one thing in my life I'm really proud of, even though I didn't get a record. It's not really running. No one really understands it, but it's finishing that trail is like is my greatest accomplishment. To share something of that magnitude with someone, that would be like you both having the same baby at the same time. Probably not, I don't know, I've never had a baby, but like something like that. Like I don't feel like many people share something that epic. Mike and Hal are probably like bonded for life, like blood brothers.
I think this will be an experience that I'll always look back on and reflect upon as a experience I'll draw strength from. It couldn't gotten any worse than that. that anything that you do from here forward won't be as hard as that.
I was born in September, and like everything else I can't remember, I replaced it with scenes from the film that I will never make. And I blinked, it was over. I was thinking my life would get slower.
I don't think I'll do the John Muir Trail again. I would go back and spend some quality time there for sure, but no more long distance trail attempt there for me.
It says we're waiting around for an ice age. It says our comforts they come.
I honestly don't know if I'll ever do the John Muir Trail again like that. I think it'll take a couple years to forget about the pain. Maybe go back and backpack it with my family and enjoy it on a real slow pace.
Weirdos to kill them and break their hearts, and everybody knows this is the end. It's now fashionable in a party conversation.
I really feel like it's like the purest line in the world.
Yeah.
I mean, through like wilderness,
yeah,
you know, point to point, It's just unbelievable.
gnarly tough.
And I also have tons of respect for Brett Hahn. That dude is badass.
The main feeling I felt when I finished was just relief that it was over, that I was still standing and breathing. There really wasn't any joy by that point. I was so out of it. I was so miserable. It was just relief that it was over, that I could just stop.
When you're young, you're hot. You had your whole life before you. Everyone will adore you. Grow up, you'll be an astronaut. Anything you want.
It wasn't a struggle to me because I was so into it. I mean, yeah, I was tired, yeah, my feet hurt, but there was no doubt that I was gonna finish. I would do it again, I wouldn't do it fast. I mean, I would do it in, 10 to 14 days or something like that.
To live a life is a form without its content. 'Cause young people get bored every day. Young people get bored.
Whoa, that's cool.
That's a cool one.
Oh, I know. I see some more rocks up there.
Yeah?
What we can put a rope on.
I just called to tell you. I just called to say, learn all your mistakes. You were my inspiration.
JMT was definitely one of the hardest things I've ever done. I'm going to be proud of that accomplishment for a long, long time, but records are meant to be broken.
I was born in September, and if I die today, just know I don't regret you. Some things I can't explain. It's a slow descent. It's a life is placed every goddamn day.
You want to go get it now? Jamie's filming all.